Hi from Ormond Beach, Florida. We're about a little less than an hour before midday, but I feel like doing my midday report now. I'm getting less and less strict about doing the midday report actually at midday. Well, no one really cares that much about that. Or the sunrise report at sunrise, which is about 6:30 a.m. here. Or the sunset report a little after 8 when the sunset is here. I do owe you a good sunrise. I will try to get there one of these days to the beach, and hopefully it won't be cloudy and we can see a nice sunrise. But in the meantime, this is really about bringing you information, and especially, I'm not the source of the information, the original source. I just try to do my best to make sure you get to the original sources, including if it is going to have to mean me reading it to you. Or just making you aware of sites over and over again and say, you know what, eventually maybe you'll say, I know about these sites. He's always getting information from the same sites. Why don't I just bookmark them and read from them? That's fine. And then I can do more personal stuff, more quirky stuff. But for now, as I'm getting the hang of this, and my main focus is building up my audience for Backlash on Shark Nation Radio, the information I just put up there, as I do every time, pretty much, unless I forget. So we're going to go to an interesting piece that came out this morning by Karl Denninger, and then a couple comments from it. In fact, the only two comments that have been approved, I guess, by Karl Denninger, or if he has someone working on marketticker.org. But it's important to hear this. Maybe you won't hear it otherwise. If you will, and you just want to read it yourself, turn me off. That's fine. Here is what he published today, called Heh Trump, Change Your Narrative, Rescue Your Presidency. And that's a very Karl Denninger is too sophisticated, too smart to ever be accused of clickbaity, but it's a catchy title. And the real topic in it, as you'll see in a few minutes, is the healthcare system. And it brings up themes he brings up over and over again, but they're complicated and they may not sink in, and you have to be able to discuss them intelligently with others. So I'm doing my small part despite my total lack of expertise about healthcare. So here's what Karl Denninger writes. Have you seen the reaction that GOP congressfolk are getting in the streets, Mr. President, when it comes to your so-called repeal and replace? Which is nothing of the sort, and you know it. I think you have, if you're paying attention. A lot of it is pretty ugly, and all revolves around the same sort of thing. Someone with a pre-existing condition that is facing a bone-crushing screwing. And I've noticed people my age on Facebook said their meme just a few days ago was, I have a pre-existing condition. This was someone I knew years ago. I just happened to see it. Haven't talked to in decades, but it's just interesting. I don't blame her for having those views, but that's what's out there, and you know it, and people don't want to seem heartless. So going on with Karl Denninger writes, I think you have, if you're paying attention. A lot of it is pretty ugly. Oh, no, I read this part. Look, as a 53-year-old, that's Karl Denninger writing, I'm 8 years younger than that, who's healthy, and in fact, while you're reading this, I'm out in the woods enjoying myself. Instead of engaging in entrepreneurship, if I lose the health lottery, I'm okay with getting on a plane to buy whatever I need where I can't get butt-sexed by the monopolists you and Paul Ryan keep protecting. And if that is impossible due to an exigent circumstance, I'm okay with dying. I've not had a bad run, and I'm sure as hell not going to hand over a material portion of my wealth to people I believe are simply robbing the people of this country blind every single day. But then again, that's because it's me. You might want to consider that this sort of problem could befall someone else that a person cares about, like their wife or child, for instance. That could lead to some very severe political solutions, and if you don't cut the crap, it's going to, because your margin of victory wasn't really very big. Obviously, if you officially at least, he lost the popular vote by a fairly large amount. Denninger keeps writing, you know damn well how this works because you played the game. It's all about electoral votes, not popular ones, and you only needed to lose one big state and one smaller one, and Hillary was president. And bringing this close to where I am, you didn't win Florida by much, and it's a big state. If you'd lost Florida, then just 8 more electoral votes and you would not be president. And Florida, of course, has a lot of very senior people in it. Pick any of the heavily populated states you won in the Midwest, or Missouri, and it's all over but the shouting. I'll leave aside the potential for some non-political solutions that people might resort to if you and Congress keep ignoring the real issue and keep throwing BS at the people. Because if we go there as a country, then everything that makes America unique in the world is lost. There's enough heat in the country right now that it wouldn't take much to set that off, and you have to be a special brand of crazy to have any desire to see it happen. There are, however, a fair number of people who are that nuts. I'm quite sure you're not one of them, and I thank the maker for that. 2018's election season is just around the corner. Yes, you're not directly part of this one, but all 435 House members are. And either cementing those seats held by your party or destroying them is happening right here, right now, and that fight will only intensify in the coming weeks and months. President Trump, you simply have to come to grips with where the problem lies in healthcare. It's not access to insurance. As you know damn well, if there were a terrorist bombing of a building every week where your properties were located, it would be impossible for you to get insurance on those buildings at any price you or your tenants could afford. One of the reasons I believe you were a better choice than Hillary, incidentally, is that you understand this, and as I said to a large number of people before the election, you have to be rather crazy to think that Trump would do things as president on purpose that would lead his own properties to be replaced by big smoking holes on the ground. I'm not sure Hillary has the same level of concern. In fact, I'm quite sure she doesn't. He continues. Health insurance accessibility is, at its core, all about the price of the underlying service. And let's cut the crap, That price has no market force or discovery mechanism available to the common man today, and hasn't for 30 plus years. That is why, and is in fact the only reason why, healthcare is so damned expensive, and health, quote, insurance, end quote, is what people are, quote, falling back on, end quote. This is why single payer, and that's in quotes too, cannot work, incidentally. It fails to control costs because it has no mandate on price discovery. It provides even more protection for those doing the screwing today than they have in the present. It would destroy the few outlying beacons of competition that exist now, and which make quite clear that common hospital procedures are priced at 10 or more times a market rate, such as the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, which I guess is a good example of market forces actually still existing somewhere in the healthcare industry. Why does it cost $100,000 to treat cancer? Why does it cost the federal government 25% of its Medicare spend, and likely that amount in Medicaid too, to treat a condition, type 2 diabetes, that can be relieved in most sufferers at a cost of zero? Why does it cost $80,000 to cure hepatitis C in this country and under $900 in India? Why is a scorpion sting a $50,000 plus occurrence in Arizona and less than 100 miles south in Mexico? It's $200. Couldn't it actually be like 3 miles south? I don't know why he uses that example, but maybe he knows about, the specific places in Arizona and Mexico, because there are border towns in both states. I don't know. In fact, I think a lot of the Mexican cities are directly on the border. What's the one that's just south of Douglas? I can't remember. He continues. Why is a rattlesnake bite $150,000 when there is exactly nothing proprietary about rattlesnake venom? You know damn well the answers to those questions. It's impossible to get a price for anything as a customer before it's done. And what's worse is that the price you pay is based on a tied sale with what, quote, insurance, again, end quote, in there. Insurance obviously is not really insurance when it comes to healthcare, but I've made that point several times based on what other people have said. I'm not the expert, again. Based on a tied sale with what insurance you carry instead of the condition you have or how complex it is. If you don't have insurance, then you're charged 5, 10, 20, or even 100 times what is charged to someone who does. If you don't consider this to define extortion and racketeering, then you either have an IQ smaller than my hiking shoe size, or you're profiting from doing it yourself. There is not one other industry where this kind of crap is or would be tolerated, from gasoline to groceries to construction to re-roofing a house or fixing a car, and it certainly doesn't appear to be legal either under 100-plus-year-old law, that's 15 of the U.S. Code, which is a section of law designed, written, and passed specifically to prevent exactly these sorts of abuses, and that deals with antitrust and fair trade. Oh, it's getting windy. Hope you can hear. Going on, the so-called medical industry, that's in quotes, has built edifices worthy of the Taj Mahal and stuffed them full of administrators who do not provide one scintilla of care to anyone, all financed with debt up to the rooftops. What's worse is that the medical industry has been sued over these practices and gone to the Supreme Court twice since the 1970s to get it all declared legal, and lost both times. Yet neither the state attorney generals or federal government has come after these jackals with prosecutors and grand jury indictments ablazing, nor will the FTC chase down the medical industry for deceptive and unfair practices. Can you please tell me how refusing to quote a price or honor it say much less billing someone for a drive-by consultation in a hospital where a doctor literally says hello from the door and then sticks an out-of-network charge on your bill, is anything but a fraudulent and deceptive practice. I get it that if you, and this is long, bear with me, don't watch, I don't know, I'm just giving you the whole thing. I put the link up there if you want to just read it. I get it that if you take this on using existing law, which certainly appears fully adequate to put a stop to all of this, and demand 1, price lists be posted publicly for everything, 2, everyone pays the same price for the same good or service, no matter whether they have insurance or not, who it's through or how they're paying, 3, that consent on an individual and price basis is required for anyone able to give it. If you're unable due to unconsciousness or similar drive-by and similar types of charges, are deemed felonious. I didn't read that sentence quite right, but you know what I mean, I think. Or you can go back to the actual text and read it. I provided the text for you. And 4, the United States demands and enforces most favored nation for pricing of drugs and devices with any firm that loses all its U.S. patent protections and U.S. licensing, that we'd have a deep and immediate recession, since roughly 15% of GDP would disappear in a puff of smoke in an afternoon. Long sentences. Not meant for reading, or I'm not the greatest reader, but hey, I'm the one doing this. If you find a better person reading these things on YouTube, go ahead and read them. Or watch them. Ugh, I miss a lot of words. Going on. All those facilities built with debt, which is most of them, as I'm sure you know, would be bankrupted immediately. But that's good, not bad. Someone would buy that bankrupt hospital the next day for 5% or 10% of what it cost to build, and the lights would remain on. Costs would plunge like a stone thrown off one of your high-rise buildings. In fact, they'd fall by up to 90%, telling, quote, practitioners, end quote, that Jeff Sessions will be as rough on them as you want him to be with dope dealers with maximum charges for peddling known lies when it comes to disorders such as type 2 diabetes, that one should chase their fast carbs with drugs instead of not eating the damn things in the first place, would go a long way toward resolving not only the cost issues in healthcare, but the underlying diseases themselves. Thank you, Pat Carfagno, for the part about I read quite well, actually. I know I have a decent voice for this kind of thing. It is a consideration in what I'm trying to accomplish and what I'm trying to do these days, but I do miss a lot of words. But, you know, as I say, you want words and facial expressions that are perfect, go watch Brian Williams. Go watch Tom Lamas. Great, very buttoned up guys, and they have the facial expressions right from their journalism training in college. They may not be credible, they may not be able to think on their feet, but hey, they read those words perfectly. Back to what Karl Denninger writes. Oh, I really agree with this part, by the way. We have an opioid epidemic in this country in no small part because of the loss of jobs available to blue-collar workers, people who are not rocket scientists, people with no hope, no future, and no job prospects often turn to intoxication. Amen. And I think of people without any religion or sense of purpose there. That's me personally editorializing here, but I've noticed a lot. Some lessons is I've learned the negative, whatever. I've learned a lot of things the hard way, but I totally agree. You know, people who who spend a lot of time watching TV, you know, why not just shift to another drug? TV for 4 hours a day is a type of drug. Okay, I'm off topic. I just really think these things, and also overcoming for the crappy food that's fed to them also. You know, maybe people are self-medicating with drugs because of all the crappy food they ate in their childhood that's not nutritious. I see things that might well be that way. I don't know. And this probably applies to people who are going to college, where they're majoring in something useless, and there's no reason to think they have a job waiting out of them. Why should they if they major in something, not even necessarily gender studies, but just history or government, and it's taught by politically correct professors when they should really be, if anything, in a trade school during high school and already working when they're 19. I don't know. They might have a more rewarding job and less likely to use drugs in that case, especially because so many people do drugs in colleges. That's really me editorializing. Back to what Karl Denninger says. We have an opioid epidemic in this country in no small part because of the loss of jobs available to blue-collar workers, people who are not rocket scientists. And yeah, I'm repeating this on purpose. People with no hope, no future, and no job prospects often turn to intoxication. There's a lot of people in this country facing this situation today. Most people fall under the average area of the bell curve when it comes to intelligence. I don't know how that's really possible. I would think exactly 50% are under the... Oh, he said average, not median. I stand corrected. So I guess there are more people who are outliers on the smarter than average side than on the dumber than average. I don't know. That's not the point of this. Most people fall under the average area of the bell curve when it comes to intelligence. Their jobs went overseas or simply disappeared not only because of bad trade deals, but because the medical system got parasitic to the point that it now consumes nearly $1.05 in the United States. And you know, it has been, I'm in touch with a lot of alumni from my high school class, and it's nice to see, it really is. And the area was somewhat mixed income where I'm from. No really poor people, but a lot of people who were middle class or even lower middle class. And some just were not academic, and it was nice to see those who did VOTEC in high school and did very well for themselves. I mean, it really is. And they didn't buy into the college scam. They weren't in, I was in top classes. They weren't in classes with me. I knew them. But in high school, we were in different classes, and they realized, learn a trade. And many of them have done very well. Just saying. Okay. Laws such as, did I read this part? But because the medical system got parasitic to the point that it now consumed, their jobs went overseas or simply disappeared not only because of bad trade deals, but because the medical system got parasitic to the point that it now consumes nearly $1.05 in the United States. Laws such as ERISA, EMTALA, that is EMTALA, and similar anti-discrimination statutes, along with this parasitic sector of our economy, means that a small business offering health coverage, a small business, you heard that? I had a phone call in the middle of that, so let me reread that. It means that a small business offering health coverage as a benefit will be instantly bankrupted by one person who gets hired and has a $100,000 a year chronic condition. And the owner of said business is forced by law to conspire with the ill applicant that comes in his door seeking work to screw his other employees. Interesting way of looking at it. The result: you're nuts to hire your first employee, and you're definitely nuts to violate any of the thresholds that trigger various requirements and laws when it comes to benefit packages and similar. One-person businesses are great, but they need to grow into 5, 10, 20, and 50-person businesses for the United States to be great again. Then there's also the technology factor with that, let's be honest here. But about those businesses, they can't do that growth under the present system because just one event completely out of the owner's control destroys everything he or she has built. It is trivial for anyone who has such a condition to target said company, and if they do, there is nothing that either the employer or other employees can do about it. If you put a stop to all of these abuses, then all the small firms in the United States and those not yet started suddenly have every reason to hire the 1st, 5th, 10th, 20th, and 50th employee. The threat of being destroyed by a parasitic, venomous healthcare system that you were forced to conspire with as a boss is removed, and American entrepreneurship is instantly unshackled. Our nation becomes the country in the world with both the best system of law and a much lower cost of labor. Well, I hope he's right. I mean, there are places, let's be honest, where the average potential member of the workforce is a lot smarter and a lot less hooked on drugs than the average person who's 20 years old here. Just something I've noticed. Our nation, especially in Asia, by the way, our nation becomes the country, and maybe Mexico too, our nation becomes the country in the world with both the best system of law and a much lower cost of labor. People with hope and opportunity have far fewer reasons to find solace in the bottle or the needle. Who knows? The recession such a change produces will be deep and nasty, but it will also be over very quickly, and the recovery will quickly eclipse anything this nation has experienced over the last 30 years. And don't forget the effect of the indoctrination by schools and the media onto the potential work ethic of people. I'm sorry, but it's probably not just the drugs and the lack of jobs. You must accept the temporary and severe contraction in the economy that will occur when you fix this problem. Yeah, it's frictional. I know that economic contraction will happen, you know it will happen, and I'm sure you've had lobbyists via various indirect forms, such as Paul Ryan, tell you it will happen, and thus you can't do anything like this. You have to do it anyway, Mr. President, and you have to do it now, because if you don't, not only is the political firestorm going to overrun you and the GOP, the economic storm bearing down on this nation caused by 30 years of this mafia-style racket in the health, quote, industry, end quote, is going to destroy our way of life and may destroy the American political system entirely. I know you're aware of this, which is why the AHCA tries to throw off some of the damage onto the states via block granting Medicaid. Take those people who are ready to lynch their representatives and turn them into your strongest advocates. This is advice to President Trump again. Take the $50,000 cancer bill and make it $5,000 in a day, which is not only able to be financed and paid in cash by the average American, and insurance to cover it if you're not yet sick will cost a couple $100 a year. Take the person who has hepatitis C and make that $80,000 bill for a drug that cures it $900, which they can put on a credit card, even if it's a 24% interest subprime card. And if you do that, be cured. Take the person with type 2 diabetes, and this is fun, and insist that their physician tell them the truth about their condition, and that ceasing eating all carbohydrates other than green vegetables will probably result in not only zero medical expense, but also normal blood sugar levels and prevent the otherwise likely blindness, amputations, and kidney dialysis. Take the $8,000 routine is in quotes, childbirth, and make it $900, which again can be paid by the average couple who wants to have a baby. Take the person bitten by a rattlesnake and turn that $150,000 bill into a $5,000 bill. Still nasty to be sure, but able to be paid. Make America a place where I want to start a new business that hires people, instead of a nation where I'd be nuts to do so. Give me a reason to set up shop where there used to be hope, and bring that hope back with me. Working toward alleviating the opioid epidemic instead of hiking in the mountains. That's what Karl Denninger would be doing, instead of hiking in the mountains. Which is what I'm doing right now while you're reading this. And the reason, well, he doesn't know. He doesn't know when I'm reading it. Just pointing that out, Karl. Which is what I'm doing right now while you're reading this. And the reason I'm out hiking instead of bringing to market products and services I have invented is that you and Congress keep allowing this screwing to go on, and I refuse to participate. So he sort of went galt. You know the expression "go galt" from Ayn Rand. We're near the end here. In short, take all the people who hate you and the government generally, because you have all allowed them to be butt sexed for 30 years by the medical industry, and turn them into people who love you because now their child, their wife, or their husband can pay for the medical care they want, and need rendering the entire Obamacare debate and discussion moot. You can do this, President Trump. The executive can enforce existing laws without congressional involvement. In fact, Congress and their lobbyists can't stop you. That sounds like a challenge. Final words from Karl Denninger before I get to a couple comments. You not only can do this, you must do it, President Trump, and you must do it now. Just a couple comments that very intelligent readers put up there. As usual, nailed it on the head, and our fearless leader isn't going to do bleep. Having worked around the edifice arena of this industry, it's nauseating to see the waste on the administrative side. Room full of managers in quotation marks, that don't know their bleeps from a knothole, yet probably pull down $100,000 plus. Frustrating as hell seeing the solution that is getting totally ignored for the moment. And I will add to that, speaking of administrators, check out with what Michelle Obama earned working for the University of Chicago healthcare system, and just read up on her work ethic as a so-called lawyer, or whatever she did. Final comment, I only have 2 comments here, but this has been a long enough video. The financialization of healthcare, the big insurance, hospital, and pharma companies, and both federal, state, and private institutions has led to massive stock, bond, retirement option, and salary considerations. Bondholders expect to get paid, I guess GM aside, or whatever, which was it, GM or Chrysler? Stockholders look for growth, huge staffs look to be paid. And all of these financial instruments are rehypothecated as promises for new financial instruments. This places a solid floor on how much money must be generated daily to support the system. Wall Street has spoken. Its words will be obeyed. The only thing it appears to me that can happen is it runs until it collapses. The collapse will be more harmful and more complete than the mortgage disaster. I too hope for a rapid recovery, but hope springs eternal. And by the way, I've often thought to myself, I don't think about this every day, but what if the reason the powers that be in the deep state put Trump in there is so he will be the one getting blamed should it collapse, if collapse is actually inevitable if you look at the numbers? I don't know. And wait, I'm getting to the new way I conclude these things. I am stopping saying thank you for watching or trying to do any sort of cute closing greeting that I repeat over and over again, and then if I become successful enough, I will put on mugs and other types of merchandise for Adam Taxon's live stream. That's a long way off, believe me. So that's all I have to say.